Hello, my friends. Got a lot of good questions this week. If you guys want to check out, we just started putting up a bunch of clips on the Live with MattRad Instagram. So just go over to Live with MattRad. Also, the YouTube has full episodes and clips and things like that as well. So check that out. All Live with MattRad clips. What's up, everybody? How you guys doing today? What up, Steve? What up, friends? Yeah, you guys sent a lot of really good questions, so there's a bunch of stuff we can get into. What up? All right, John. Connect in. What's up, buddy?
Hello.
I don't know where my AirPods are, so hopefully the audio's all right. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, can I go without them then?
Well, if you put your thing on a table, sometimes it bounces back and I get the extra.
All right, I'll keep it going.
So, somebody said been going through the YouTube videos. That's great.
Sick.
Oh, I almost ended the live.
Don't end it.
Doing, man?
We're just getting started.
Just getting started. Yeah, don't end it now.
I'm good today. I'm mixing a fun one today. So I'm
kind
of bopping around. Yeah, it's Keto.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Our friend.
Yeah.
Micah. Yeah. It's a fun one. It's a bop. It's got some tight features on it that she might not want me to name, so I won't say that.
Super secret features for the Keto.
Super secret.
Well, you can see this is my life right now.
Damn, dude. When are you leaving?
I'm going to start moving things over to the new spot this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's mine as of Saturday.
Okay.
Somebody just talked to it. Yeah, we got some kick and bass drum questions today, which can be fun. But yeah, so I've just been starting to tear down the studio, working on storage stuff, and going to set up a bunch of my new spot, a sort of reduced version because this room is so big and it's got a piano in it, and so I'm figuring out where I'm going to move the upright piano and all that kind of stuff.
Got it.
But yes, I'm basically taking thank you, man. Congrats on the new place. Thank you, guys. I'm taking 10 days off here. Unless there's some last minute thing, I'll come in and, send something over. But basically
prioritize the move, man.
Taking a little time off so I can actually get a set done. But it's crazy. I'm moving, as everybody knows, is a crazy process. But it's gonna be good. It's gonna be exciting. You'll have to come over and check out the new spot. I'm gonna be over in Malibu. We'll go run on the beach like it's Baywatch. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see me do that.
Yeah, man. Well, Q&A. So we got a bunch of great questions. I guess we
can't wait.
Just kind of jump into it. There are a couple of interesting ones, fun ones. Some questions I never thought about before. Kevin asked, as a mixer, it's not something I guess I've run into it a couple times. As a mixer, do you need to buy the plugins from a client's Pro Tools session? How do you deal with that? Do you? I figure that's one of those things that's a bit of a pain. But how do you deal with that? Sometimes buy, sometimes rent, sometimes be like, hey, can you print this?
Yeah. Hey, all of those. Yeah. I buy it if something looks cool. If I think I could, maybe I'll get a screenshot and recreate, demo them, have my assistant who might have it and I don't, print it for me. Whatever.
I sort of got the impression when working with guys like Serban that they just buy everything. But the rest of us who don't want to just buy everything or don't have the funds to or whatever, you're kind of like everybody else. Where you're like, if I have it, I have it. Somebody else, you trade favors, do it. I mean, of course, demos you can only kind of do once unless you switching computers. But
I like keeping we talked about this in one of the earlier episodes. I like keeping my tools to a minimum on my computer. Yeah. Just to, I guess, minimize time between decisions. I want that. I added a new tool that I might talk about depending on if it fits any questions today. But I installed a new tool yesterday and I used it a lot.
Just say it. What's the new tool?
Oh, it's called Spectre.
What does it do?
It's a multi-band kind of saturator, exciter tool. Like I always talk about saturation tools being my favorite. I'm using it very additively. I have no EQ boosts on this session so far. It's only with saturation, and that's kind of like my limitation to myself today on this mix, because Keto's rough sounded really good. I'm just trying to enhance it little by little, but kind of character enhancements, not like broad stroke things.
That's cool. Somebody asked a question. I don't know if I wrote this one down.
No, Spectre. I actually don't know the company name, and I can't look it up right now. The plugin's called Spectre. It's not Isotope. I like Isotope too, the ozone stuff, but.
And you use was Neutron too? You like?
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some questions about, there's always questions about saturation.
Waves Factory. Yes. Thank you guys.
People are always fascinated by your not turning to compressors, but using saturators to achieve some of that result. Somebody was asking, don't saturators hurt transients? And I was DMing with them a little bit, and I said, I think the idea of having a multi-band saturator where you can you're actually enhancing transients sometimes with a saturator.
Sometimes, but I also we've talked about earlier episodes that I remake them with transient shapers if they're being lost. So yes, you have to be careful with oversaturating and transients and smoothing things out.
So transient shapers and saturation plugins, harmonic distortion plugins or boxes together oftentimes will substitute for what other people are trying to achieve with a compressor, where you're having a tax poke out, that sort of thing. So it's a common for you.
It's a completely different approach, and to me, it smacks harder.
You like the transient stuff in Neutron, and what else?
Yeah, I like the transient stuff in Neutron. I like Spiff by Oak Sound.
I don't know Spiff. Huh?
It's the same company that makes Soothe.
Okay, cool.
Spiff is cool, and the Neutron one. Those are the two that I use.
Yeah, we've gotten a number of questions continuously, and I should say the full episode we did on harmonics is both on my IGTV, but on the YouTube channel now as well. So if people want to see us just talking about saturation. Hey, what up, Chris?
What up, Chris? Yeah, it's fire.
Just you said Spiff's great. Yeah, if you want to just hear us talk about harmonics and saturation for an hour, we got it on the YouTube channel. We'll probably do that again.
That'll always find its way in. I mean, this new tool that I'm talking about, like, that's what it is. That's what it's doing. I'm not finding myself losing transients because I'm being really specific in the regions that I'm using it. So if it's a low end thing, I'm not losing low end punch because I'm only using it in upper harmonics to give a little bit of buzz or push to the bass. So I'm not losing transients that way. And if I am, I'm making up for it. Also multi-band. You just got to listen for phasing. It's tough. Your crossover point and low end could fuck up things. So transient shaping in multi-band is difficult, and listen carefully when doing it.
When doing the combination of transient shaping and saturation together, you can very easily do too much or not enough of either. You have to just kind of find that little balance where it's like it's a little more saturated, so you lose transients. But if you do too much of both, then all of a sudden it doesn't sound natural. You gotta, this is why you're good at your job,
James. Avoiding boosting with EQ, meaning, I just think there's more character to pushing or being additive with saturation, with multi-band saturation. You're
adding more information and more density, as you always thought.
More density, so I can give myself more headroom and push things where I want to. I don't know. When I think about EQ, yes, they can be refined, but I've never heard a plug-in EQ that I say, whoa, that sounds crazy good. That gives me that character that I'm looking for. And the saturation plugins that I'm discussing a lot of the time here give me that character that I'm looking for.
It might be a nice little segue. There's a question which I liked a lot, which is, how do you deal with an overproduced song with too many parts?
Oh, good one.
And let me just say first, I think both of our philosophies generally is this sort of minimal effective dose type thing. If you can get away with a rich sounding mix, a great arrangement, a great song, any of the sorts of things with the fewest number of moves, the fewest number of parts that add up to a whole. And that's one of the reasons you talk a lot about density in a mix and trying to achieve density with a small number of elements. If you can get just a couple or a few rich sounds and make it feel complete, that to us in our taste is a real victory. That you want a record like, I don't know, one of my favorites, a record like Drop It Like It's Hot or something where it's like,
ooh, so simple.
It's really simple, but it sounds rich and thick and crunchy.
There's no bass in that either, right? Am I crazy?
There's an 808 that changes pitch in the hook, but it's subtle. But it's so magical.
Subtle. The kick though is the thing.
The kick is great. And of course there's the one, and that there's something about achieving a very complete sound with a minimal amount of elements. So anyway, if you were presented with a production that has way too much shit in it, how do you think about it?
I think about it a couple of ways. I think reductive and subtractive when it comes to kind of the mud, the redundancies. So let's
in
consider
the frequency ranges, you mean?
Yeah, but also in parts too. Like find the character that you're looking for in the main. Okay, let's build it from the bottom. Say there's drums and there's a bass, and that's pretty minimal. There's one main bass or one bass sound that's created from two bass layers. Let's not think about specifically in layers. Drums, bass, and then say there's a bunch of synths, and they're all doing the same thing. Maybe there's 12 synths. You would call that overproduction. I take all of those synths besides one that I think is whether I think it is or it's dictated that way in the rough, or it's obvious that one sound is the main sound. I take the rest, I send them to a bus, and I'll carve out a lot of mid-range in them to create space for the character of the main synth, right? Same thing with guitars. So in layers, I'll filter up a lot of bottom end, and I'll kind of get rid of a lot of information in the muddy group of things, and bring clarity for the main characteristic sounds. So I don't really mute. I don't. I'm also coming at this question a little difficultly because the producers that I'm working with are pretty dialed in. So this isn't a common issue in my life these days. So
it seems like what the question generally, what it applies to is, how do you create space? How do you minimize and create space for things that have too much? And it seems like, one of the things I've learned from you a lot is thinking of not just frequency ranges, but very narrow things where like you can have a very different character of a vocal at 10K and a hat at 12K and a synth that has air above that or below that.
Yeah.
And you'll do a lot of filtering where you're actually low passing and high passing different things where it's like, you don't need this 12K information on this
like
guitar.
Air band on
let's
everything.
bring it down to,
you just got rid of everything. Like it just, it's so redundant. It just adds up to noise. So I'll see that sometimes with the Mag EQ airband on like every vocal track. And you're like, wait, which one do you want to occupy that space? They can't all do it. You're like, oh, it's a feel thing. What? I can create feel in a better way, not having airband on 55 vocal tracks.
Well, I've found this a lot when I'm writing and producing, because so much of, like I'll get in for 2 days with an artist and we will produce, a really rough, simple demo in those couple of days just to get the song down. We're song focused, maybe a few sounds trying to inspire the artist. You get a demo and then they're gone. I've got a vocal. I've got some background vocals. I've got a basic track. Now what do I do with it? And what I will often do is, again, it's the Hemingway, write drunk, edit sober. I just go crazy on it and throw tons of stuff on it. And then the next day go back and try to put on my editor mixer brain where I'll filter things, take things out, and be sort of a reducer. Which I know Rick Rubin used to get on the credit he used to get on his records back in the day as reducer, not producer, because a lot of times people, as they're starting out, you're throwing lots and lots of things in there, or when you're just generating ideas, you're throwing lots of shit in a production. So as a mixer or as a producer, finisher, or whatever, a lot of it is about picking the elements that are going to work best together, filtering things out, not trying to feature everything, which I used to do a lot more.
I used to try to do that too. It seems like a losing battle all the time because the human ear can only hear 3 things at the same time anyway. And we tend to have 4 main characters in songs that you're going to have to balance between what you're paying attention to and what's in the foreground. And clearly we want the vocal to be in the foreground the most time in popular music. So that and a drum groove and a bass line is already enough. And I'm always going to be a proponent for chords in music. So that's the 4th kind of thing. So if there's 24 sounds doing the chords, I want to pick the one that has the most unique characters. It's not a bunch of mush doing chords, whether it's like a plucky kind of thing, so it's attacky, or it's like slow attack and mushy and womp kind of vibe. Like, pick which one of those is going to be the main characteristic. So when your ear hears it and you feel it, it can say, oh, that's cool. It does that thing. And it's pokey, or it's boingy, or it's bouncy, or it's lush. Let's pick some, I don't say these things out loud when I'm doing it, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a character in those sounds. So when it comes to, again, it's rare because even today on this Keto record, I mean, it's like, man, it's four main elements and it sounds so good already. The synth is one synth sound, or at least the layer that I'm getting, it sounds like one synth sound. Could it be four? Could it have a flute up top and a weird thing down below and a Juno below? Like, it could, but to me, it's one synth. So that to me is her synth sound. That's what she wanted her synth to sound like. So how can I elevate that or leave it alone? So overproduction, there you are. I was shouting out your dope.
Talk about your song, Tito.
I'm having so much fun on it, and I took a nice perspective break to come on here, and I'm going to jump back in and finish it.
There's a piece of advice which I will say out loud now. I say to myself all the time, and I fail to follow it constantly. But if you try to feature everything, then you're featuring nothing.
Yes,
if everything.
That's what
is
I mean
loud,
about the redundancy in a high shelf EQ. Like, what are you doing with 55 vocals with the same EQ on it? It doesn't just common sense wise doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Keto, there you go. It's more than just one sound.
It sounds like one idea though. Like the synth part sounds like one idea, and that's beautiful.
And that's the thing that's tough.
If that was sent to me in 24 layers, I would imagine my brain going fucking crazy, being like, oh, I can geek out with each layer. Like, that's not what I want to do. That's not what you want me to do, right? That's not, I mean, maybe sometimes, but that's not normally what people want.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, definitely figuring out a minimal number of things to feature at any given time is an extremely important part of this process.
Yeah. It's more fun that way too.
Yeah. Oh, Yanni asked about tube traps. You got tube traps in your spot of some sort, right? You got
I do. I have tube traps. I have 22 of them. Yeah.
22 tube traps. It's like a tongue twister. Yeah, I have like 6 or 7 in here.
22 tweed tube traps.
That's fantastic.
What do we want to know about them?
You just use them. What they do basically is absorb certain bass frequencies and help with bass standing waves. Correct?
It helps with a lot more than that.
It
helps create a room within a room. I'm not actually going to talk about this. We're going to let Unfuck Your Studio discuss these with people. They don't like me talking about the attack wall too much.
Okay, well, I have tube traps.
Yeah,
I mean,
there are better ways to do what they do. They worked for me to get me up and running within 2 days of moving into this space 4 years ago, and I keep getting hired, and I have so much work that it's working for me. And that this is the conversation I have with them. And
well, shout them out. Yeah, people send people
Spider
to them.
and Rory at Unfuck Your Studio. I would imagine they'd have a better response to this that I shouldn't speak on. I have them. They work for me. At the time, they made a lot of sense.
And they are a way to help with the listening position and creating a studio in a big room.
And only in the listening position. They don't really do much otherwise. Yeah. But I have a very precise and listenable mixed position. And again, I keep getting hired, so there must be something going on.
I guess for people that don't know what they are, they're hollow cylindrical tube traps.
They're not hollow.
Yours are not.
No.
Mine are.
Really? Oh no, the tube traps, the attack wall. There's some crazy math and science inside of them, chopping up waves and redispersing them. It's like
these might be different things then.
Okay, yeah, the attack wall, but they're tube traps. That's what they're called.
Well, so let's just answer for both of them then, because these are the ones that Eric Valentine built in his studio. That are designed to absorb certain bass frequencies or resonate at certain bass frequencies, which knock down standing waves in a room.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's different. That's different than what's going on in the attack wall. So again, this is not the best use of our time because I'm not.
Well, somebody asked about tube traps. So I don't know if they were talking about my tube traps or your attack wall, but those are the answers. Those are what those two things.
I have no idea what they're doing. They just make my life easier in this giant space that I have.
So the guys at Unfuck Your Studio helped you build that. That's the attack wall using. Mine are the Eric Valentine hollow cylindrical tube traps. They do some bass resonating. Let's see. Miggy asked about the two bus, which I think is you have your DW Fern VT7. Is that what's called?
And VT5. The 5 is the EQ. The 7 is the limiter.
And it's an interesting question. When do you instantiate them in the mix process? Do you instantiate?
Never not in.
It's always in. You're listening through them. It's a compressor and an EQ that are lots of tubes, but you rarely are doing much with the meter, correct?
Yeah, the needle doesn't ever move on the compressor limiter. Just using it for tone, and the EQ. I stick with a 20 hertz boost on the bottom and a 16K boost on the top, and they go anywhere between 2 to 6 dB of boosting, depending on where I'm at. And then there's a high cut at, I always forget the number, it's like 27K or something ridiculous, and that sits anywhere between 8 and 14 dB of reduction, which I think tends to blow people's mind with that much high cut at that. But it just kind of has a way of focusing the Nyquist frequency, the top frequency that we can actually hear and perceive. It kind of focuses that with a high cut and a high boost, doing a phase pop, and I kind of just dial that in on every mix differently.
So sorry. So to say that again, just so I make sure I understand, on your mix bus there is a tube EQ that does a simultaneous boost and cut. Yep. In the super high 27K, yep. way above what we can hear. But of course,
the boost is at 16K and the cut is at 27 or 28K. I forget what it is. I could walk over there and look at it, and it does a certain focusing of the high end because of a little bit of a phase shift. And yes, exactly.
Pleasing to you. How did you discover that? Was that
by turning the knob?
You just started playing with it and you're like, ooh. Started
playing with it and it started bringing the mix into focus, like all the high end, like that unnecessary redundant noise that I'm talking about. That stuff just kind of focused downward. Almost things start sounding brighter, but they're quote unquote darker because I'm cutting off all that air. And not all of it, just a substantial amount of it. It's more of a tone shaper. It's more of a shape plugin, a shape tool. Than like a filter. It's not filtering. It's like,
do you always use it? Do you make many adjustments to it?
Yeah, it's always different on every song. And we have a way of recalling it. So the only thing that I have to recall from my mixes is that mix bus chain.
Nice. And because when you're using other outboard stuff, you are generally printing it.
I print it. I'll recall the vocal chain. So someone sends me a new cut of like the second verse, I can go back to that.
It. Yeah. Very interesting.
Extreme high cut on mix bus. I'm not sure that I would do it with a plugin. It's probably worth trying with a plugin. To me, it's the magic in the box with the tubes and the harmonics and everything going on there. That's really making the magic happen. I've tried it with a plugin and it's not the same. I get a similar effect, so I think it's worth fucking around with a plugin. Yeah. You can use the Ozone 8 or 9 vintage EQ to do this move. I think their high cut is at 20K though. It seems a little low for this kind of move. Maybe try it with the Pro Q3. Try it with something.
Yeah.
Just like hear what that's doing, and
somebody asked another question. There's a pretty straightforward answer to this, but it might be cool to talk about again. Alex asked, is it better to have saturation on individual tracks or in submasters and mix bus? And I think you and I probably both agree that
yes, Ruby 2 would work.
Ruby 2.
That's what I meant to say.
That trying to do things on individual tracks, if you can achieve it, is always better. It gives you more. Yeah. Try not to rely on the mix bus for. I know a lot of people have compressors.
Groups.
And things
if you want to glue all your background vocals together with a little saturation, then send it to a BV group and then put some sort of saturation tool on that, some sort of limiter on that. But yeah, I'm more of an individual processing type. I have a template that has very subtle group treatment happening, but it's so subtle. Like there's a Pro L2 on my background vocal bus that's doing a dB of reduction maximum. Like it's super subtle glue. So while I'm working on things, there's a bit of a handicap that like it won't peak over this or whatever,
I think
it's a subtle amount of imaging on synth groups and key buses and like I said, background vocals that kind of smear the background vocals out so the lead can be really pokey and forward and again, all subtle things. There's nothing heavy-handed.
So it's not 100% true what I'm about to say, but it leans this direction. If you are processing things as a group, you are much more likely to make them less distinct between each other. So if so if you're putting saturation or compression or EQ or anything on a mix bus,
you are often going to sacrifice some amount of clarity between the elements. So if you are trying to do something like that, like background vocals, and you want to actually make a nice sort of smear thing so the lead vocal can pop out, putting them in a group, trying a little imaging or a group saturation or compression or something like that is a nice thing. But if you're trying to, you'll sacrifice some clarity. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you need to do it. But I would say generally getting the individual elements right, and then it goes back to, is the part right? Is the lyric good? Is the performance, going back to that.
At my position, the part should be right before it gets to me. So I have to treat it as if the part is right. Also, I wanted to mention that we haven't done any food references yet, but we're saying schmear instead of smear. So I wanted to just point that out really quick.
Bro,
we both did it too.
I'm fasting right now. I'm going to eat once we're done with this. I try to eat around like 1 p.m. or 1:30. So everything comes out as like a Freudian food reference.
Yeah. What else we got?
Let's see. Nadir, if I'm saying that correctly, asked
Mike Miller. That one was for you. I'm glad you cry-faced. That was for you, the schmear.
Nadir asked about kick and bass phase. It said, what informs your decision? This is a perfect thing. We got a great whip. I put up our 808 kick drum, a little clip on the Live with Matt Rad Instagram. It's also up on the YouTube Clips channel. So check that out where we talk about 808s and kick drum for a few. But maybe we can just touch on it for a second.
I want it all to be in phase. I want to hear what it's like with everything in phase first before I decide if something was better out of phase.
Well, you made the interesting point before. You always want to just use your ears, make it in phase, make it hit the hardest, that sort of thing. But it's also important to listen to, if you're mixing, the rough mix, because sometimes they might have a group of snares or kicks or something that add up a certain way that if they were actually all in phase, you'd add too much body to it, or the kick would thump in the wrong place or whatever, even though it might be in phase and better. Make sure that you're not changing, if you're only the mixer, make sure you're not changing the relationship of phase such that it no longer sounds like what the producer intended. Because it might be, I've definitely thrown,
I do that sometimes too, though.
Just be aware of it.
Like, okay, so if a bass say there's two basses, like a live bass, upper harmonics, and a sub, and they're out of phase. When you flip the phase and you have you'll now have a shit ton of low end, but the tone won't be as nasally and buzzy, right? So that's the sound that the phasing is injecting upon. And that's what the producer had. They had this like loud, nasally bass tone. You're like, oh shit, where'd that go? Now you could just say, well, it has more low end, so now it's better. That's not objectively true, right? It feels better now that it has this, but now you must we've talked about this before. Now you must recreate, I'll hit your question later, Zach. That's not a stupid question. We can talk about that. Yeah. So I'll now recreate that with saturation techniques and exciters. Like I've talked about this exact technique in earlier episodes, but you have to make up that sound again somehow. And that takes ear training to understand where that frequency band is that created that nasal bass sound that was liked by the producer and the artist in the room when they were creating it, but now we actually have low end. Now we actually have sub that it's in phase. Now let's get both. And that's difficult. Yeah. And it's not, and sometimes it might be better, meaning get the job done faster and make everybody happy by leaving it how it was. I'm a sucker for low end. So I'm always going to put everything in phase and then remake that shit.
Well, let's talk about phase for a second. I'm gonna see if I can describe it, and please make adjustments. I know this won't be a perfect explanation, but
there's no
when something is
phase is imperfect.
When something is literally perfect in phase, it's the exact same sound, and it will just be twice as loud. So if you take a signal, copy it, or take a sound, copy it to another track, those two tracks are perfectly in phase. Anything other than that, even two performances of the exact same thing lined up perfectly, is still going to be slightly out of phase. So everything is slightly out of phase. And so this is why it's such an interesting topic, is that the phase relationship will change. If you hit two, if I hit a C on this piano, which is in tune, and a C on the other piano, which is in tune, which is an upright, and I line them up to be perfectly in phase. So the fundamental frequency, the low C, is perfectly in phase. The other harmonics and the relationship of each sound might be out of phase. So there might be one way where the waveforms are lined up right on the dot for where the attack is, and the C resonates really loudly, but then when I flip the phase, I lose the bass, but I gain some other upper harmonics, and
Yes.
that relationship, and it might be with a bass and an 808, or a kick drum and an 808,
Yeah.
or even a vocal and a guitar, or background vocals. Oftentimes, if you're using lots of auto tune on background vocals, they'll start phasing and smearing. So you actually don't want to tune everything. You want, that's what a chorus effect is.
Yep.
Is you're taking the signal, you're duplicating it, you're delaying it, you're pitching it. That's what phase and flanger and all those things are.
It's very desirable.
Yeah, so the thickness of sounds often comes from them being somewhat out of phase or out of time. And so that relationship is essentially what we're talking about, and it applies to basically everything, anything that's in a similar frequency range. So the idea of a kick and an 808 and bass drum all being in or out of phase is really about experience and using your ears, because sometimes you want the impact to be a certain way, or maybe you flip the phase and then you remove some of the low end off the bass guitar so it really sings here, but then the kick is subby. There's all kinds of ways to do it and think about it.
Yeah, it's another thing you have to practice. It's visual, you can line things up, but you also have to be listening. And sometimes you want to hollow out a bass sound by flipping the phase on it, and it'll thin up out the upper harmonics and let that sub sit down low. And again, that's something that we just have to, it's a taste. But if you're a mixer and the sound of the bass is coming from it being out of phase, then you're going to have to recreate that sound, because the producer's going to be like, what the fuck happened to my bass?
Yeah, things being out of phase can result in interesting sounds, interesting drum sounds.
General priority hierarchy in mixing overall phase.
Is that phase? I don't even know.
Oh, is that about phase?
I don't think it's about phase.
No. No, I don't. There's low end extension, subby, clean, the proper amount of it.
Well, so you've talked about this before. You're when you're setting up
competitive enough high end.
I think the question is, what do you do first? And you've answered this before. It's sort of like low end vocals, drums.
Yeah, but today's on Keto's mix, the first thing I did was fuck with the synth.
Yeah. And also, you said it was a really good rough mix, so you were getting something that was pretty close.
Yeah, so I was messing with the synth and the chorus cool guitar lick that was happening. Like, those are my favorite two things. And then I popped the Unfair Child on the vocal and started with the vocal. And I think I wound up doing the low end last, but I was doing it with the vocal. So I did like kick, bass, and vocal once I dialed in the chords and the vocal separately and that guitar thing. Then I soloed the bass, the kick, and the vocal, and I kind of got the bouncing quality of the low end to the vocal that I was wanting from that, because Keto and I kind of talked about that on the phone before we jumped in. And then I put those chords back in and really finessed them accordingly. But I hit the chord sound first. I mean, things are different every time.
That's dope. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Whatever's grabbing your attention, whether it's a positive or a negative, right? So if something's getting in the way, attack that first. If something feels great and you want to see if you can make it even better and enhance it even more, go there. Like, I don't always start with a problem. I tend to start with inspiration, right? So if something's jumping out at me in a good way, I want to be like, yo, what can I do to that? Like, just see. And if there's nothing you could do, you take it off, Like I was going to jump in earlier on the mix today, discussing when we were talking about boosting and EQ and how I don't really do that. Like on the EQ on most of the sounds, if there's any EQ, it's like 1 to 3 reduction points, depending on if I'm trying to get something louder and I have to compensate for it getting louder. Like on the synth, I wanted the synth to poke a little more, so I just turned up the gain. It's like, okay, cool. Well, now that the gain's up, there's a little too much low mid in it, so let me do a dynamic EQ reduction in low mids. But that's just so I can get it louder, right? That's not. It's not because the sound had too much of it. It was because once I turned it up to get it to kind of fit in the same zone, I needed to reduce that. So just really minimal on moves and understanding why you're doing them. Just like have 50 EQ points in if you can't like make sense of why they're there by the end of the decision making.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that a lot in sessions I get where there's a whole lot of little EQ moves that are just,
and it just like sounds like they turn the volume down by doing all of it.
Yeah,
I see that when someone posts a crazy EQ and you're like, there's 50 points and they're all down. I'm like, you could have just turned the volume down. It doesn't make sense when I see that, like someone flexing about how many EQ points they put in their Pro Q3. It's like
weird flex.
Weird flex. But it happens. Just turn the sound down and then find some character boost in it to embolden that thing you were going for. And
I found this a lot when I'm mixing as I'm producing, which is an interesting challenge in and of itself, but that I find myself boosting EQ, boosting, and then I'm sort of getting closer to the end of the process, and I look back and I'm like, I just have an EQ which I've basically boosted all frequencies, so maybe I'll just take this off, turn it up,
turn the volume up.
And it turns out it always makes it, well, not always, almost always makes it a little bit cleaner. I mean, again, it gets back to the minimum that you can do, because it turns out that if you're boosting some high end and then I compress it and then I boost some mid range and I took something out and then all of a sudden I've got 3 different EQs and they're all kind of boosting all over the place, and then okay, let me just make a duplicate, let's see if I can simplify this quite a bit.
And again, that example, that's a great example because that exists. Maybe just try again. Maybe that wasn't the right way to do it and that was a late night, and just try another approach.
And especially from the perspective, I mean, as a mixer, usually you're not spending multiple days, multiple times. You go back to a song a couple weeks later. That sort of thing doesn't happen as much to you as a producer. If any producer people watching, that happens all the time, where you work on a song and then you switch something up and you try a new production. All of a sudden, the song you've been playing with for a couple of months, you realize like, why does this have 9 plugins on? Well, it's because when we tracked the vocal, it was like this, but then I did this thing to try to make it fit in this production. Then I added another thing, and all of a sudden you've got too much stuff on it. So let's see if I can go back and minimize the whole chain.
That makes sense in production world, and in mix world it can make sense. But I wind up seeing I usually have no more than 3 to 4 plugins on a track, unless it's some sort of effect that I'm trying to create, like a throw. Maybe like a parallel processing chorus effect that maybe I want to like sweep around you and do something wild, and pretty minimal on effective processing these days, and just kind of getting to it.
That could be a good transition into the other question I got from a few people. Reverb, delay, time-based, and something that you and I have touched on, or at least discussing in previous streams. What do you use? I mean, I talk about what I use, what I like. What do you use? Do you use any hardware stuff?
No hardware stuff, based on the recallability factor of someone sends another verse, I have to like recall the Bricasti. Like the Liquid Sonic 7th Heaven plugin is pretty damn close. Like I talked to Mick Gazowski about this once, and who uses he's got 4 Bricastis. He's like, I don't even use them anymore. I just use this plugin.
What does that plugin do? I don't know that plugin.
It's a remake of the Bricasti in a plugin form. It's a reverb.
It's a reverb, okay.
Oh yeah, I mean the Bricasti is like a famous hardware box. It's like 4K for one channel of reverb, one stereo box. So you'd have to have 4 of them if you want to, do multiple effects like we all do. Yeah. So I use that a lot. I use the Good Hertz Megaverb for more effecty verbs, more dense, not clean. The Bricasti's clean. That Sunset Chamber is classic on vocals. It's beautiful sounding. It's rich, it's lush. It can be really long and doesn't take up too much space. DS and EQ before the verb, after the verb. Fuck around with saturation on verbs. I love the Valhalla delay right now.
I love that plugin.
That plugin is so fucking cool. It's vibe right away. Just turn that drive up and mess with filters and like all the modulation effects in that. So tight. So I'm pretty much using that for time-based stuff. I love the Eventide H3000. So I use that a lot.
That's worth the $300-400, whatever it is. It's pretty magical. I like Soundtoys stuff too. I used to use Echo Boy a lot. I kind of moved over to the Valhalla delay just because it's new. I mean, part of it too is like what feels fun to use, and the Valhalla thing, like you said, is just vibe. And
I like the Echo Boy is still tight. It's just I don't use it right now because of that. It's just more fun to touch this plugin right now. But Echo Boy is still tight. Can we get a list of these? I want to listen for myself. Oh, UAD stuff. I haven't used UAD in like over a year or two.
Hey, Boom Bap Zach, if you want to make some show notes for us, that would be helpful. All these episodes will be up on the IGTV and then ultimately on the YouTube in a week or two. But yeah, we haven't gotten to the place yet where we're actually doing show notes and things. But it would be good to get lists of all these things that you're talking about.
You're gonna have to listen through, man. You're gonna have to listen through.
We're a low budget operation.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, Jared.
Yeah, thank you.
Gigahertz Mega.
Yeah, those are the shit.
Yeah, I like. Oh man, there's a bunch of people just saying in the comments that are taking notes, which is amazing. I love you guys. If you want, and there's been a few people that have offered to help with creating content and helping, put things together. It'd be amazing. Just DM me. I'm starting to try to figure out how to just get this stuff out. I mean, like I've been saying to some of you guys in the DM, and like I said on the first episode, John and I, and I'm going to talk to some other folks as well. It's literally just want to provide you guys with information and
Yeah, and not one word answers. I want to talk about why we do things. Like, why do I use this thing instead of what do you use on the bass? Oh, Pultec. It's like, why?
And sometimes the answer is just like with the delays. It's like, I love Echo Boy. I use that a bunch. And the Valhalla delay is fun. It's new and it's fun. Yeah, and there's something important about what we do.
Maybe something new and fun will come out.
Yeah.
And then we'll replace that.
Yeah, you want to just be excited
today,
about this process.
I mean, I'm just messing with Spectre. It's my go-to for this mix, and I'm really learning what it does to every sound. And I've talked about that in earlier episodes. You pick 5 plugins to use and learn everything about them. Because by the end of that, you'll learn what they're great on and what they're not as good on, right? So I'm using it on everything now, very subtly and in completely different ways. There's 10 different saturation modes per band on this thing, so it's not going to sound like I used it on everything. If I didn't say it here, no one will know that I used it on every track.
Yeah.
But I'm using a different. Okay, for the bass, I want this warm thing. For this one, I want a tube thing. For this, I want a tape thing. Just kind of using different characters from this plugin. It's super versatile.
Yeah, it's a really important thing when you get a new tool. And I don't do this enough, but I'm doing it more and more. When there is a new thing, actually spend like 5 or 6 hours just fucking playing with it and seeing what it does, and even do a tutorial and read the manual. I got all the Arturia stuff finally.
I'm about to read the manual on this thing after I do a mix. I'm going to do the mix, and then I'm like, oh, well, what were they trying to emulate? What were they modeling in this? What were they going for on this rectify sound? Like, what were they actually going for? But I want to know that after I fuck with a mix or two.
I was going to say I got the Arturia bundle of a bunch of their vintage synths as like a CS80 and a bunch of the other things.
Sick.
And one of I had it years ago, and the interface was so clunky, and then it didn't work on Pro Tools or something. Like, I just got rid of it after a while or stopped using it. But I just got it again, and my favorite thing about it is when you open, at least in Ableton, when you open the plugin for the first time, it says, "Here's the tutorial," and it's like. Some of them are like 40 steps of how to use every aspect of this synth, and it's a fucking blast. And you can actually go through and really smoke a joint, lock the door, turn off phone, get weird with plugins. Absolutely.
Let's jump up 2 questions. 2 people asked about headphones.
There's some headphones.
I never mix in headphones, but have a couple of thoughts on it. I've been mixing headphones ever in my life.
I got thoughts too. Yeah.
And I hate them. And I can always tell when I have used headphones for production and making beats. I think a final mix should not be done on headphones. I can always call out when something was done on headphones. There seems to be this disconnectedness to headphone mixes, this kind of hole in the upper mid-range because you keep turning up louder and louder and louder, so that's going to get harsher and harsher with Fletcher Munson curve. We talked about that. So you kind of keep warming that area up, and then you put on speakers, and it just sounds everything's like pushed back. There's not enough forward movement to mixes. So I think mixing in headphones is dangerous. And if you're hiring a mixer to mix for you as a final mix, I'd argue they should spend 0 time or close to 0 time in headphones, except for maybe checking quick panning things and like artifacts. If they're declicking, if you're trying to listen for clicks, like I think there's utility to headphones, but I completely on the don't mix in headphones for final mixes unless you're Skrillex mixing Bangarang EP. He's the best at that.
Well, so this is just real quick. You mentioned Fletcher Munson curve, which we talked about before. That is how the frequency range changes in your ears. That how your ears perceive frequencies changes as the volume goes up. And one thing that happens, there's basically two things in my mind that are tough about headphones, and they both have to do with air and space. And if you are having, speakers that are right next to your ear, you are both in the high end losing the bounce of a room, even if it's a very dead room, acoustically treated. There's something about high end bouncing a little bit that's really important to the perception of it, and you don't get that in headphones. You can work around it. Again, Skrillex has made amazing sounding shit, but very specific to him, and he's a very complete artist in that way. And the other side is low end, which is if you don't have something that's actually physically resonating in your body, I don't know how you can make a judgment about a kick drum or an 808 or something if you don't physically feel it in some way.
And also just to answer this question here, HS7s and M50s, and you're going to trust the headphones over those because they're not good monitors. So that's not a fair representation of the question here.
I don't know what
they're Yamaha speakers.
Okay.
Versus the M50 Audio-Technica headphones.
Look,
I have one in my closet. I never use it. That's an interesting thing. I've heard about good results from a mastering engineer friend of mine that was doing that. I think that's a little bit different. Maybe in that kind of last final stage of, well, this is what got approved. We like this, and maybe you're not doing heavy-handed moves. Then that's okay. I don't know. I'm just going to go with, I'm not an expert on headphones. I don't like mixing on them. The space part that you're talking about is a huge part. There's suffocation. There's natural compression in our ears already. So if you're mixing loud in headphones, your ears are compressing and limiting, and that's affecting the sound. It's like monitors that have limiters built in. Yeah. You're hearing limiting happening before you're putting a limiter on. It's like it's double doing these things. So.
Well, I want to give some advice because I think you and I are on the same page that what you really need is great monitoring and speakers. But for people that can't afford 5, 10, 15 grand for a treated room and good speakers, I want to at least offer some thoughts. And my best advice would be what I think a few people are saying in the comments is get a few different references. Get a few different references that you know well, and it's not going to substitute for one great reference and then AirPods and whatever. But if you don't have the ability to get a great sounding room with expensive speakers, which is you really kind of do need to spend money, as we've talked about with monitoring, I think the best thing is to have a few different references that you know really, really well.
Yeah, because I don't really like to recommend budget monitors. I don't know. I mean, I used to think Dynaudio was cool for budget monitors. They have good mid-range. They have good musicality, and the high end doesn't hurt. I don't really, and I'm not saying it to sound like an elitist or something. I think this monitors are the most important thing, so you need to save. So buying something along the way sounds like a step back from saving your money for great monitors. So I would stick to headphones until then. Yeah.
I mean, I will just say again, I think having multiple references is probably the best thing in my mind. It's tough though. It's a tough situation. I feel like I still don't have great monitoring. By the way, when are you linking me with PMC?
Whenever you want to.
Okay.
I was waiting for you to get to move.
That's true. Yeah.
They already told them they're ready.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be setting up the studio starting this weekend.
Just text me so we on the side about that, because I want to roll up with them too. So
that sounds good.
What else we got? We got 10 more minutes.
Let's see. We got 10 more minutes. Were there any other questions down there in the chat? There was a bunch that went by. I didn't really see them.
What's the entry point to high quality monitoring? I don't know. $3,000 for the Result 6s from PMC.
How far down do those go?
That's the. What do you mean? How far?
Frequency wise.
Oh, they'll give you everything you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so $3,000. I mean, it's obviously a lot of money, but if you are a professional mixer, or that is your aspiration, you kind of got to start there.
And you can make something sound really great on those speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have them behind me.
Yeah.
I use them.
I really think that you need something that's going to get all the frequency range, And I'm still a huge fan of the car test. I know you don't really do that much, but also you didn't have a car for 2 years.
Yeah, I just got it, and now I do it. I don't really like make decisions from it though. I'm mostly listening to podcasts in cars, but
what I find by having one reliable speaker system that you kind of check at the end is the like, just in case you miss something. That feels like is this enjoyable? Does this sit with all the other things I always listen to?
Exactly.
Let's see.
What do we got?
There's a lot of other monitoring questions. Let me see here.
Do you have any questions for me?
What are you cooking right now?
Oh, the last 2 days I was doing a cucumber and herb gazpacho, kind of a Persian gazpacho, cold soup with different fishes in it. So the first night was a lemon saffron halibut, kind of parchment paper with capers, and it was really nice. And then last night was a salmon that I pan fried, crispy skinned. Got to use my new knife to score it, and it just cut through like butter. It was so nice.
Fuck it, bro. I just want to talk about food for the next like 5 minutes. That's what we're going to do. I don't care.
Persian lime olive oil used. Not on this one. I use that mostly on salad. Tahdig recipe. Yeah. I've been fucking around with different kinds of tahdig recipes. So I was doing...
What is tahdig?
That's the Persian crispy rice.
Oh.
It means bottom of the pot. So I've been doing lemon ricotta tahdig, where I take ricotta cheese and lemon squeeze and put that in with the rice with some turmeric and some saffron rose water. I'll make the crust with some nice ricotta and lemon, and it's pretty awesome. That's been my new venture, kind of making a citrusy type.
Yeah, how do you keep inspired to cook? I like that. Yeah, I'm so hungry. I think I'm gonna go cook. I did some slow cooked beans, my Mexican beans, chili. Mm-hmm. I still have some chicken from last week. I think I'm gonna make myself some tacos. Got some chilies, got some salsas. Put a little butter on a corn tortilla. Make it happen.
A little butter on a corn tortilla.
First been up. I think that's probably.
Ever cook vegan? No, I do not cook vegan, nor do I eat vegan.
I've cooked some vegan.
But how do I keep inspired to cook is something like experimenting with diet. So right now I'm pretty pescatarian, so I'm learning how to cook different fish cuts. I got some fresh sashimi grade fish last weekend and got a new knife and sliced that up real nice and made an herbed kind of ceviche with some albacore, and then kind of made a sticky sushi rice type with the leftover the ceviche juices and herbs and barberries, and kind of made a Persian sticky rice kind of thing, which is cool. So just kind of working with fish right now. I've gone really heavy down the lamb route and bought a whole lamb all cut up, and so there's always like a new way just to affect your diet and try to practice new things.
Somebody asked about sensory deprivation tanks. Have you done that?
No, but I want to.
I really want to do that too.
Yeah. I've never done it. It's been on the list. Now seems to be a time not to want to go do it because I don't want to share a tank with someone that was in it beforehand. All their body.
Got to go full Rogan style. Have you used Proax, the monitors?
Yeah, Tony. Oh, coffee. I prefer that. Proax. Yeah, I don't like them. Tony had them the whole time we were together. Let's talk about coffee. Yeah, I'm super into Scandinavian coffees right now. So I got April coffee.
We have to do a whole one with my brother when he comes.
Yes. Tim Wendelbo and Le Cabra. Tim is from Norway. Le Cabra and April, I believe, are from Copenhagen. So I'm super into that right now. Scandinavian coffees are interesting. These guys are all roasting a little differently than other places where they're roasting for shorter amounts of time at higher temperatures, and then kind of walking that back a little bit towards the end, and it kind of keeps the bean a little bit more kind of green and fresh inside and kind of gooey inside. It's like a proper croissant. Like you get the right crispy, but it's just a little.
It makes me want to eat coffee beans.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually wanted to cut one open and kind of look and see what it looks like. It's like, because that's the theory behind it, at least, to see if it actually translates at all. I'm curious about.
Dylan
Nomad is great. Nomad from Barcelona is great.
I was just say I'm basically all French press or Mocha Pot. That's kind of what I do for all of mine. I mean, Mocha Pot, I just, hung out with a couple Italians and a woman gave me one and she was like, we all just use this. This is what we use. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know. And it's great. It's perfect. It's like the halfway between drip and espresso and it's easy and just kind of make
I'm doing espresso and Turkish coffee.
Oh yeah. I got to have a Turkish coffee with you.
Yeah.
You put the cardamom and all that in there?
No, you don't have to do it that way. It's just the process on how to do it, but I would love to do cardamom coffee.
Can you read people's fortunes with the...
No, I don't do that. No. And my Turkish coffee shop friends at Box Coffee down the street don't do that either. They're from Istanbul and they're like, we don't do that.
I don't know if it's real or not.
You're all blurry now. I can't see your face.
I'm blurry? Oh, well, you look clear to me.
You look like a scanner darkly or something.
Somebody said when I did a live with this producer Donut the other week, and somebody said we looked like GoldenEye N64 characters because it was so pixelated. Oh man, we should talk a bunch about because I actually stopped. Yeah, there you go, N64 007. We should talk about do a whole thing on meditation and psychedelics and that sort of practice. We should talk about that next time. There's been a few questions about that. I didn't know if I wanted to completely get into that right now. We talked about it a little bit before. Somebody asked me, I stopped doing my hour a day when things got really crazy and there was just a lot to do. Once I moved to the new spot, I'm going to get back on the hour a day. I think I ended up doing like 2.5 weeks, which was great.
Wow, it's great.
But I'm going to get back to that when I get over to Malibu. We got just a couple minutes left. I think we should probably call it here.
I'm still doing 20 minutes a day. Still going strong. I think I'm just shy of 500 days in a row still. So
Evan there is a meditation teacher, an old friend of mine.
Nice.
Great musician as well, and lovely human.
Amazing.
Maybe
I'm also trying to. You should definitely do that. Can we 3-way?
Yeah, that'd
be super fun.
Yeah.
I'm trying to utilize more of Sam Harris's app and kind of go deeper into not just the daily meditations, but the Q&As and the interviews with gurus and masters and these people that have donated their lives to this practice and understanding it. This one interesting thing I pulled from one of the conversations was people get confused with, you don't have a self, because I don't really believe in that I have a self, right? So I kind of subscribe to this point of view.
Yeah, Waking Up app is the one that you and I both like. Headspace is great too. I love the Waking Up.
But what I find really interesting from this conversation was the idea that you don't have to rid yourself of personhood, and the idea that you have a personality and you like things, and separating that from the ego itself in each moment of the day, right? So I'm still John who likes Persian food, who makes music, but I don't identify as that every minute of every day. In fact, I don't really identify as that at all. That's just something that I do that's part of me, but I don't even choose to do that, right? That's just throughout the day. I'm just going to go hopefully inject myself into a flow state and finish mixing the song we got off. But it doesn't change the fact that I am that person, or I exist as that person, and I am aware of that person, but I don't make decisions as that person all the time. And I can rid myself of that pressure and give myself that freedom. And I thought that was an interesting way to separate the persona to the self, and the idea of self could be forfeited and passed off. But you still like Persian food. You still like these things. This is still part of your person. You
definitely like Persian food.
I do a lot. So I just thought that was an interesting distinction between people getting really, really confused about what it means to not have a self. And I'm like, I don't really feel like a self. I feel like an aware being that's existing amongst a society that is seemingly functioning properly and lucky to be here. And,
well, we'll do more meditation. Yeah, I like the Waking Up app a lot. I think they have a free tier, and then there's a subscription tier. But also, if you email them and say, "Hey, money's tough, I can't afford it," they will give you a free.
Yep.
They'll give you a free year. I believe it's not much of a hassle at all. Well, John, love you. Pleasure as always. Thank you guys for watching. We'll do another round of this in a week, and have A's for your Q's.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Bye for now.
Peace.